Good morning. Thank you all for joining us. We'd like to welcome you to our webinar on tips and tricks for a foolproof program review. I hope you understood the play, right? April 1st, foolproof, right? We're having a little bit of fun this morning. We're excited to have you join us today as we delve into what we have really come to understand, right, as a faculty-driven approach to making program reviews both meaningful and impactful. So over the next hour and a half, our panelists are ready to help you, whether it's your first day and you're just getting started with a program review, and you're trying to figure out what's that first step, to transforming your program reviews into engaging narratives that reflect and tell the story of your institution's journey over these last 5 years. Our panelists are here to help you through this process and help you understand that it can be a reflection rather than an intimidating task. And hopefully by the end of this, you'll feel a bit more unburdened and confident and ready to take it on. Our goal is to help you see the bigger picture without the hassle of recreating data. Our panelists will share practical tips on how to leverage existing information to help create a comprehensive and insightful review. So at the very beginning of this, we invite you to sit back a bit, relax, and get ready to discover how to make your program reviews a seamless and enriching experience. There will be an opportunity to talk a bit more with our panelists in some breakout rooms here shortly. So as they're talking, maybe think about which, we'll go through some more specific topics, but think about who you'd want to talk to, right? And ask some more pointed questions too. And then we'll come back at the end for a larger group discussion to talk about next steps. And so up first, I want each of the panelists to just introduce themselves, to tell us not just your name, but the title at your institution, what institution you're at, and what your role has been with program review. So if I may, I'll start with Lynn.
Sorry, good morning. My name's Lynn Breer. I'm the Director of Institutional Research at Lakeland College, and my role on the program review process has been, first of all, with some of the reporting things, but as our last assessment director has retired, I took on the role of coordinating and making sure that all of our program review processes are conducted and completed every year.
Thank you. Up next, Hillary.
Hi, everyone. My name is Hillary Meyer. I'm the Dean of Academic Success at Triton College. My division includes many academic support areas, such as the library, tutoring, tech support, access and accommodations, early alert, and TRIO. And so in this capacity, I am the administrative supervisor of those teams, and I work with them to ensure their program review reports are meaningful, and they work closely with research as well. I see our director of research is on this call, which is fabulous. Hi, Kurian. So he'll get to hear all the great things I'm going to say about his team.
Thank you, Michelle. And I know that you're only here for a short time, but we're so glad that you're able to join us. I'm going to say that, but she's not on yet. Dr. Medor, would you like to go ahead?
I'm the Dean of Academic Services and Strategic Initiatives at Moraine Valley Community College. Here at Moraine Valley, I oversee many areas. Curriculum assessment, program review is one of them, the Center for Teaching and Learning, and 2 extension sites. And that's sort of as well as scheduling, the short version of that. But I've been involved with program review for probably almost 16 years at previous community colleges as well. And I oversee not only the workshop that we deliver, but reviewing and providing feedback to our faculty and staff.
And last but not least, Janita, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Gianina Ellis. I'm the Career and Technical Education Program Improvement Manager at the College of DuPage. I have, as one of my major functions, I help facilitate the program review process at the college, working closely with the faculty chairs as well as the academic and support team leadership. I've been doing program review probably in this role for over close to 15 years, but prior to that, I have other experiences in the program review process, totaling probably 20 to 25 years of experience. Here at the College of DuPage, we really do see the program review process as a continuous improvement model. So I'm happy to share some discussion with you today and look forward to hearing your thoughts as well. Thank you.
As you can see, we have an all-star panel here for you today. And I hope that you'll take just a little bit, maybe not all of it right now, right, and digest it, but hopefully there's one nugget that stands out to you that you can implement today with your program review process, or talk with the person who's working on program review, right, so that your process is a bit more fulsome. So we thank many of you who replied to our survey where we had asked you some questions. So we were trying to plan this time so that it's useful to you and that you get what you need so you can move forward. And so with that, we're starting off with a few questions for the panel that hopefully will answer quite a few of the questions that you might have about program review. If not, I ask you to throw your questions into chat, and we might have some time to go through more of these. But I'd like to ask the panel, what's the first step in your program review process from the role that you play? What's your first step? And anyone, please go ahead and jump in with your thoughts.
Yeah, I saw Gianina coming off here. I would probably say our first step here, and my first step, is to look at our list of programs that are fall within the SIP year to be reviewed. And we have that 5-year list that we submit to ICCB with every report. But often, you know, a program may have been approved and is not on that list at that period when that list was produced. So we will go through the list thoroughly and add any additional programs that should be reviewed for that year, even if it's only 2 years to be reviewed. So technically, you should be adding those programs if the SIP code falls within that year. And after we do that, we start to identify who is responsible for completing the report. And I have what I call a tracking list, and I'll do my first invitation to a workshop. So I'll stop there. That's sort of like the first steps, is who and what. And then from there, we start to identify and email and invite to workshops those individuals who are responsible.
And I would piggyback on to what Sherry says. You know, the most important thing is to be to find out, you know, who is in the schedule and to communicate that early. You know, we see it as a continuous improvement model. So as programs become new or added to our curriculum listing, we will contact the program chair as well as division dean and let them know where they are in the program review process. We have a 5-year schedule for each program that's listed. And one thing that we do always is we do an annual update. So as we're doing an annual update, you know, that also on that annual update form does indicate when their program 5-year program review process is going to be due. We have just recently transitioned our process over to a software platform that helps us with the workflow in a more transparent way. So we're not just going back and forth with emails. And with that, I'll jump off and let someone else jump on.
From where I sit, my first step is getting the email from the research team around December that our area is up for our 5-year review. They have a great schedule and timeline and an offer. We've moved from having kind of open public workshops to individualized personal workshops. The research team offers on an as needed basis. And then typically I will engage the staff and kind of explain to them what this is. since it's every 5 years, we do have a fair amount of turnover. So there's usually at least someone from that team who's brand new to it. Often it's the chair or the director who's going to be writing or leading the writing of the review. So working with them to kind of explain what it is, its purpose, and then some of the larger benefits of really having a collaborative approach and taking the time to sit down and look, kind of having that space and time that's kind of mandated that we don't always have, to kind of take a snapshot of where we've been and where we're going.
And at Lakeland, the only thing I have to add after we do those initial steps is in the fall, we set up meetings, individual meetings with our program coordinators that we hold a program improvement and we review some of their data with them, and they can use that data then. If they're up for review, that program can use their data as part of their program review process. And that has kind of initialized ours, and it kind of has sped the process up and along a little bit more. So that's really helped, and people don't put it off to the last minute quite as much as they have in the past since we've started this process.
And I think I'll add another tip. We've created what's called a program review timetable, and it's actually just a 2-page form that includes the calendar dates of when things are due, information on how to contact us for consultation, whether it's in a small group. Our group meetings are still being held where they can get some information on how to use our new systems. And then we do have time that we can meet with the faculty and to review their data and their trend analysis, and if they have any questions for us. So that echoes something of what Anne Marie put into the chat, where they share that information and communicate that. So I think that's pretty standard across most of the schools.
There's a piece in the chat from Anne Marie that also, I think, said the exact same things that you all are saying, right? There is a common first step. And if you all don't have that common first step, that's something to work on implementing right away. You're hearing from other institutions who've been through this process several times about their first step, right, within the program review process. So hopefully, if you take nothing else, we could stop the webinar right now, and I think many would be good with what you've already given. So I can't wait to see what else you all share with us here in these next few questions. And so, let's take your first step. We know what you all are doing, and we often know that you run into challenges almost right away, right? So you don't have to share every challenge, but maybe what are some challenges that your institution experiences with your program review process? And then I'll ask you within that, what are some solutions that you all have found for that or you're thinking about? Who would like to go ahead and go first?
I'll jump in here. Over the past 5-6 years, when I worked with our previous assessment director who kind of oversaw this before I took on this responsibility, we noticed when we reviewed all of the program reviews every year, we noticed where some faculty, especially the CTE faculty, when we did the CTE program reviews, where there was some struggle where they didn't really answer some of the questions, or they didn't know how, or they couldn't remember some of the changes that they had made over the past 5 years, because that's a lot to remember over the past 5 years. So what we did was we initialized some questions where we identified some of the areas where people tended to not respond as filled out the questions as thoroughly as they could have, or they just kind of left them blank because they just didn't know what to say. And so we pulled that into our program improvement fall meetings that we had. So those are questions we actually ask every year, and we take notes during those meetings. We post them to their folder on our shared drive. So that way they have a record of 5 years of that information. So they can easily go back to that and refer to that. So it makes some of the questions that they had more difficulty answering or just couldn't remember what they did, it makes that process a lot easier. And so we've got a lot more thorough answers on some of the questions that some of the program coordinators struggle with a little bit more than some of the other questions.
And to what Lynn said about the struggle of answering questions. Before I came to Moraine, there was a process in place, and they had a template that had suggested answers or how to respond to a prompt. We continue with that, and that works really well, but we've had to update it quite often because we don't want to give the answer, but we want to encourage our faculty to think about how it applies to their program. But there's some that are just tried and true, and they're just great. Like when we talk about the comparison of similar programs, right? That here's a template. This is how you can use a small table and answer this this question using data from other programs. But we still see that it's not as much as how to answer. It's sometimes the reluctancy to want to answer honestly. So we've gotten to a point where we're like, this is a chance to grow and not to be necessarily judged. But you want to fully answer it, but be honest and use the data to help tell that story. So we've had to work a lot with our faculty to for the performance and equity pieces in particular, to feel comfortable enough saying, yeah, you know, our program isn't that diverse. You know, we could do better, and here's where we see the gaps. That has been, I've seen great improvements over the last 5 years. Before I would send reports back and it was like, nope, this is what it is. This is how I see it. But we've done a lot around equity at the college, and with the Equity Academy and some other initiatives, I think it has opened the minds of our faculty and staff to be more comfortable with answering questions that are sometimes uncomfortable when you oversee a program. So I would say that's been a struggle, but the solution has been to do other professional development around equity. The IR team here is phenomenal. And so we are a college that has an abundance of data, both financial and other student demographic data. We collect a lot. So that has been a plus for us. But one of the struggles has also been with cost analysis. So when we look at the cost and we have programs that share a budget, trying to disaggregate that when you have, let's say if you had theater and philosophy and all of them are sharing the same budget, trying to, you know, parse out the theater courses when they all share the same budget, it becomes a challenge. So we're still working through that, but we've gotten a lot better with that.
One of the things that sometimes is a struggle is really engaging your adjunct faculty as well as your other full-time faculty. So at the College of DuPage, we've addressed that in multiple ways. One way is that for especially the adjunct faculty, we want their feedback and input. We do program review feedback surveys, not only to the adjunct faculty, but to all the faculty in the program. And that really allows them to use their voice and share what their thoughts are on the challenges and the strengths of the program, as well as what future needs are. So we feel that the surveys do fulfill that purpose, but we're still struggling with getting adequate feedback. Adequate surveys back from the faculty. And I think sometimes we struggle a little bit with survey fatigue. And another challenge for us was the now having faculty take a look at the cost, especially when they compare to other programs. And at the College of DuPage, we have worked with our IR and IT staffs, and we have a pretty sophisticated cost analysis, a unit cost program that used to be required by ICCB, but that we continue to run and do at the college. And we actually do have that comparative data so that we're able to see how it does compare on that disaggregate. So that's really helped us out.
Similarly, we have gobs and gobs of data. There's no shortage of data, but data literacy in terms of faculty and staff knowing what to ask for, where to find it, and how to interpret it is something we've attacked really through our strategic plan specifically. So it's been a multi-year effort to provide dashboards and to get faculty in particular, but staff as well, to understand what does this mean, what are you seeing, and how can you use this to inform decision making.
Thank you. Michelle, I see that you were able to join us. If you'd like to chime into this question, feel free. She may not be able to connect. Hopefully she's able to hear us. If not, you are always welcome to go back to one of the previous questions. So I'll ask the panelists, now that you've shared a challenge or two, I think that this is a common one that I'm forever asked. That is a challenge around just generally around the program review process. But how do you change, how has your institution worked to change the perception of program review from being just a compliance activity?
I'll
I
speak.
know, who wants to jump first?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I'll speak from my areas, which is again our academic and student support areas. What I've done has been very explicit about the multiple audiences that the program review reaches. Yes, it gets submitted at the state level, but at the local level, it's a critical opportunity to share a story with our executive team, knowing our president and VPs read every single word. It's a rare opportunity for departments to really tell their story in a comprehensive way, as well as kind of lay out plans for the future as a way to kind of set up our annual budget requests, for example. So that's one. So figuring out, what does this mean in terms of communicating up and out? But also we've talked, especially with staff turnover, about this is a gift you're giving potentially your successors, as well as your future selves. So when we, for example, read the 2020 program review as a way to catch ourselves up for this year, this was peak COVID, and like understanding, seeing that mindset and seeing what the plans were at the time, social distancing, virtual support, all these things that were top of mind, hot topics, and looking how far we've come, what we've kept, what we haven't, is so informative to both team members who've been here and those who weren't. So it really gives that context to decision making, and it's really helpful. So that's kind of what we set out. So we've got kind of 3 distinct audiences, and it helps bring kind of meaning. I think even if someone doesn't care about state requirements, they're going to care about their team in the future. And if they don't care about that, they may care about what our president knows or thinks about the area.
Gianina, you're talking, but we can't hear you. It says you're unmuted. There we go. Nope. Nope.
Oh, so sorry.
Yes, now we can hear.
Okay. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. That's technology at its finest. One of the things that we do at the College of DuPage, and I'm sure that many of the colleges also do, is we incorporate a continuous improvement model, meaning that we do an annual update for program review, specifically for those program review, looking ahead program improvement activities where the faculty identified that in the last program review report. We have them report on that, as well as integrating this with their assessment plans. At the College of DuPage, we call those SOAPs. Those are student outcome assessment plans, are also reported annually um, uh, to the college, and those are posted and shared in a shared directory, so everyone has access to that. And then the other thing that I think we help do is we've integrated it so that it's not just every 5 years. We're looking at enrollment trends. We're looking at our equity gaps, and like some schools, you know, there are some programs that have made some great strides, and other programs are still at the beginning stages of that. So I think as we try to normalize these activities annually, it doesn't become as daunting. So it's a part of their regular integrated routine on overall program improvement.
Here at Moraine Valley, we have what we call, you have soaps, we have pies. And so we have a plan that essentially it can be tied to strategic initiative or any other report or initiative, but we identify, and I saw something pop up in the chat about what types of activities would require the follow-up. We don't do a holistic annual follow-up for the entire report. We use it only for those special projects that are a year to 2 years out. So if you're looking to improve enrollment in a particular demographic area, or you're looking to do something with assessment, you've identified some gaps, that's where we use the pies. And then you can take that pie, which is due every April, same date as our program review report is due to my office. And then you have essentially a year and a half before you have to report out, the October of the following year. And that allows for you to continue that if you need more time, to include other people. It's through, we have SharePoint, we call it the portal, but the SharePoint can alert others who might be involved in that project, whether it's financial support you need, approvers, such as your vice president or dean, or collaborators. But it really allows for the process to not be so focused on program review, but the projects that help improve your program, right? And so it takes the compliance piece out of it as a checkpoint, and it's more of a project. It's something you might, involve others to work on with you, including research and other offices. So that's, I would say, one of the things that we do. We consider it a follow-up, but we try not to make it a compliance follow-up, if that makes sense. And they truly are the owners. At that point, the dean is really involved, or their assistant dean or someone else. It's not necessarily the program review office, but by the time I see a report out 5 years later, those things are completed. And that's what's great about closing the loop, when you can do something that doesn't feel so much like compliance.
Lakeland has really kind of tried to focus on how to the student outcomes and the quality improvement aspect of it, to really integrate that. And I think after 5 years of trying to do this, we've finally starting to get through. And it's kind of a new, as we get new program coordinators in place that fill out their program, the program reviews, we can kind of use what we've done over the past 5 years to kind of get them involved in the process, and we've assigned mentors then to new faculty and program coordinators, so that they have someone who can help them with some of this processes in place, and to share some of those benefits. But it takes a while for us to really convey that, because a lot of our faculty do just see this as, oh, just one more hoop to jump through, another report to do. But it's really trying to get them to see the value of how it can help their students and improve their program, identify what their program needs, and for planning purposes, for the next year of budgeting, for their divisions. All of those aspects kind of come into play when we're talking about the program review process.
That is, I think, one of the most important pieces around program review, right? We don't want it to be something that we have to do, right? We want it to be something that is considered to be continuously improved. And again, I hope that those of you that have attended today are hearing that from our panelists, right? It's not something that's just a check mark and done and then put on the shelf. It is something that is continuously updated, and in the hands of faculty and staff to say, you help us own this. What is it that you want more from your programs? What is it that you're trying to improve? How can we help you? Right? You're not alone in this work. And I think, each of what you all offered absolutely can help move this from a compliance, right, to more of a commitment from the institution. So with that, I'm going to ask you, because we're never done with tips and tricks. And we know that there's not just one right way to do program review. So I'm going to ask, if you think there's something distinct about your process, what is distinct about it? And also, if you haven't shared a particular tip or trick that can help, I ask that you share it with the audience now, as well as invite the audience. If you have something as they're talking, share it in chat.
One of the things that we do after the 5-year program review report is written, we schedule a discussion meeting with all the faculty within that program or discipline, along with the academic division dean, the director of assessment, the vice president, the associate vice president of academic affairs, and myself. And we really lead about a 45-minute discussion where we ask the faculty, tell us your story as you just completed this process of, going over the reflection from the past 5 years. What are some strengths that you noticed in your program? What are some of the challenges? And looking ahead, what are the things that you need in order to be successful? And we found that this type of discussion really did allow faculty to realize that we're in all of this together. And as a support, what can we do to help you reach where you want to be in 5 years? And we've really found that to be quite useful and really demystify the program review process and really make it meaningful, so that we're hearing each other and we're listening to the point where, I'm also in charge of coordinating the Perkins dollars for the college. So especially when there's CTE programs, sharing that, how can Perkins further help you meet your program goals?
I'll just share that, similar to Gianina, I like that you have the reflection built into the process. We started about a year ago taking the PI, which is kind of the follow-up to program review and assessment, and we do a celebration. So we have pies or something that's shaped like a pie. And we've joined forces with them to do an assessment/pie celebration. It's every April. So it's really going back for the previous year. And we invite individuals to share just projects that they pursued and the outcomes. And we put it on a PowerPoint and we just have it scroll, but then we allow people to get up and sort of just talk about it. But it really is no program, nothing formal. It's just come have some, desserts and coffee about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we invite their deans and department chairs as well. So we started to celebrate more, which I think is really important, to just acknowledge the work. It takes a lot of work, and we think about all of the program reviews. The reports at our colleges might be over 500 pages by the time we put it together. So imagine that one area that has 200-page report, that particular year. It's a lot of work and collaboration. So I think the reflection is great. I can't stress enough, the workshops have really helped us. The guided notes that we provide have really saved me a lot of one-on-one time, because sometimes it's difficult to have those meetings often, as often as the person may need. So to be able to direct faculty, but also find time to meet with those who really need the hands-on, that has helped me manage my time a little bit. And then we have a one kind of place for everything. So you can go there and literally find all the resources, the tips. We have a tip worksheet, the PowerPoint. We record the workshop. If we do it virtually, we'll record it. So we have a lot of resources, but every now and then I get a phone call. Where is this document? And I'll walk individuals to it, and then they'll set up a meeting if they still need, have questions. But we do one-on-ones too. We do data drop-ins, which will happen usually right about April before the reports are due. But the workshop is all attendees, all of those who are up for review that year, we do a workshop. And that has been one tip, something that we probably won't ever do without. I'll just say that. That's where we get the most questions, and our faculty and staff feel confident, I think, to move forward with writing the report. It's been 5 years. Sometimes the template changes too. So those workshops are valuable.
And I think just to piggyback on what Sherry was saying about celebrate, I think that's an important piece too. And at the College of DuPage, at our faculty spring in service, we have time where we're with all the faculty that we will highlight one program review and one program review from each division and bring the faculty up to share their story to the community at large. And, you know, I think that's really a recognition of, hey, this is important. This is how they've used program review for program improvement. And I think that's triggered others to think, well, maybe I could do that, or, you know, it's really been inspiring. So um, I think celebration is really an important factor, you know, that you're recognizing the work, you're recognizing the time and effort, and you're recognizing the results. As Sherry mentioned earlier, closing the loop, using the program improvement and then using what they found out from it for that improvement process.
Think what you both shared, right? Your tip or trick was almost a solution to a previous challenge. And so I hope that you all are thinking about your own process and how you have developed certain pieces because it sounded like something was missing or faculty were asking for it. Just whatever's specific to your institution, right? I think you can think a little bit more about that. Write it down, right? That's a part of your story and what makes your program review process distinct. But you can hear also, right, that that's a shared process that every institution is trying to hear out, right, what their faculty and their staff need to ensure that this process becomes one more of storytelling, right, and moves away from that compliance. So before we break up into some groups, I'm going to ask one more question to each of you more generally. We've heard a little bit about Moraine Valley's workshops, professional development. I'm going to ask, what types of professional development or training does your institution offer to help support the program review process? Anything that any of you would like to share?
About Moraine Valley, but what I didn't mention is that we have a learning college day each year where we have workshops. It's a day where there are no classes, students are not present. And we always are intentionally doing something around assessment, program review, and data. And so we work with IR, our assessment director, myself. We always do something around those three things, sometimes together, but we just talk about how to use data, which seems to be has been a weakness, I think, across the state when it comes to not, if you have the data, then how do you interpret the data, right? And so we do a lot around data with program review during that time, because that seems to be the most interest from our faculty, not just the process, but how do I answer the questions in a way that gets at what is wanted, because we do have a rubric for the CTE portion, right? And that can be used as a guide for some of the other ones as well. But I think the data struggle is still there. For us, I'll give you an example. We have a large student population of Middle Eastern students. Prior to a few years ago, we weren't collecting that data, and those students probably were identifying more as white. And so we knew there was an opportunity there to use that data, and we started to look at our data differently in terms of enrollment in programs and succession rates for those students. And so we talked about, the new things with data, new categories that we may have, Tableau, all of the resources that our faculty may have at the colleges to go and look at data outside of program review and to constantly come back to it each year with a different, perhaps lens on what they're seeing in trends, and not just rely on the research office, although the research office provides all sorts of data. that they can own the data and be a part of this throughout the year. So we do a lot of training with that. We have an assessment academy. We embed all of these things into all of our academies. We are like, I don't know, we just love academies here. We have an equity academy. We've had a retention academy. So those academies allow for deeper work with our programs.
And I think Sherry has hit the head. Data is key. And one of the things that we do at the College of DuPage is we have multiple ways for faculty to hone in on their data analysis or data interpretive skills. And we, for the last 2 years, have we'll have Monday and Wednesday data drop-ins where they're very informal, where faculty can come in. We have those staffed by the Office of Assessment, my office, as well as Office of Institutional Research. And we really invite the entire campus. So anyone can come in if they have a data question. Where is the data? How do you use the data? How do you look at that data? What are some ways that you can parse that data to get to the question that you might have at hand? In addition, I think most of the institutions across the state have probably had completion committees. Again, using data for that. Are there population groups that are, where are the equity gaps in our completions? As well as having data champions and really having, and that's another faculty team where they're being more exposed to data and using data and really sharing that information with their colleagues across their divisions and departments.
One of the things we've been intentionally working on in the last few years is busting the data silos. So we all tend to, especially in the enrollment management student affairs side, everyone has kind of their own custom, databases or data collection, whatever it is, whether it's, collecting tutoring appointments or library circulation or student life activities. And so a great partner to our research team is our Director of Early Alert and Intervention, who manages our student success management system. We happen to use CRM Advise, but there's equivalents out there. And so he's been he's been on a project to collect and make sure we've got as comprehensive and a holistic review of students' activities and participation and behaviors as possible in one place, so we can use that to make better informed decisions about what they're doing, like across the college versus in individual departments. And so then we can make some better predictions and analysis about like what is actually moving the needle, because a single tutoring appointment, for example, may not lead to course success, but when you're looking at patterns of larger behaviors, it can be much more helpful. So it's been a lot of individual work, including collecting sort of attendance and manually inputting it, but it's worth it because it's getting us a fuller picture of students beyond kind of just discrete data points.
These are all very helpful. Again, I think you probably do some of these things at your institutions already. I think what you've heard a little bit is that it's a bit more formalized with our panelists and very intentional, especially thinking through not again just what your faculty and staff need, but even the timing of it. I've heard, if you backwards design, right, your program review process, if you think back from September when it's there due, what are those key pieces that will help you along, right? This assessment academy idea was formed with ICCB to say, we know that you all have some program reviews that are up, coming up here shortly, in a few months. What are some key pieces that can help you along that process? And so we started this series in February with Dr. Burrs, who I believe is on the call, talking about the purpose, the promise, the politics, right? Really set us up with why are we doing this, and could help you think through with your team why you're doing this work. That then, we're getting into more practical tips and tricks. You're hearing some philosophy around program review as well with each of our panelists, but you're getting a bit more in-depth, having more in-depth conversations around this. And then the last session that we'll have in June is around CTE and assessment of student learning. And so hopefully each of these have been very intentional in your process and that you're taking a bit at a time to refine the process that you have currently. And so we'll jump into the next section where we asked you, where is it that which program area do you need the most information or support? And again, we have some great people that are going to help facilitate a conversation in these breakout rooms. And so they'll answer questions that you have around using data, around the process, around measuring quality, around assessment of student learning, particularly to 3 areas, right? We've already talked about the CTE and assessment of student learning conversation is going to happen in June, but today we're going to focus in on academic discipline. So you might join Dr. Medora in that room and talk through that, ask questions, talk with each other, right, about what it is that you're doing around that. Gianina and Lynn will be in the cross-disciplinary instruction room, talking about English language acquisition, helping to answer questions around developmental math and English and adult ed. And then we have Hillary. And if Michelle's able to join, in the student and academic support services room, where you talk all the other things, right? Admissions, financial aid, recruiting, all the other pieces, right? So join one of those rooms, get some more conversation going, right? Around, again, process, quality, data, assessment, and then come back. We'll come back about 10:15 and think about, again, looking ahead, what's coming ahead, and answer any other questions. So hopefully this will work. I will put out the rooms, just join one, and we'll come back about 10:15. So thank you so far. All right. Most of you have made it back. Thank you for continuing to stay and engage in a conversation around program review. As we wrap up these last few minutes, I'll ask if you'll add to the chat so far, what's been the most helpful tip or trick? What has been the most helpful in these in the last hour and 15 minutes? You'll share with the rest of the group. That'll be incredibly helpful, especially as we continue to think, what would be next, right? And helping you think through your program review process. So if you will, what's been the most helpful tip or trick that's been shared, whether it's by the panelist, whether it's by someone else, in the breakout rooms, maybe share what you have found to be the most helpful. In the meantime, I'm going to ask our panelists to help us think ahead and help us maybe see what's on the horizon. What do you see in the future of program review? And this could be either from your institution, at the state level. What are you seeing ahead? Any of our panelists want to jump in?
Through our work with PrAC, we've talked a lot about rubrics and things like that, just to support the work to have a better idea of what, for compliance reasons, ICCB might want from these, knowing that there's not necessarily a right or wrong with completing some of the templates. So I anticipate that with the peer review process that was sort of piloted, that we will see more feedback. That's a hope, I think, from also our faculty staff. They want feedback from ICCB, not just me. So I'm hoping that it will be on the horizon. I think also we've talked a lot about platforms and the appetite if colleges had some sort of digital way. And for those who have worked in the Higher Learning Commission's platform, my vision is something like that would be like, oh, if we had something where other people can read it, they can see it, It's very easy to use, submit the reports, and I can hit a button to say, okay, for our college, all of these are ready to go. Bam. The compiling of the Word document probably has been the thing I have disliked personally throughout this entire process over decades, because they can shift. And one of the tips I shared was to lock it down. That's what we had to do here, is we lock it because the format was shifting so much. But I hope that we'll get more savvy in the digital space with completing program reviews in the future, even if it's a way to internally share feedback to our own faculty without ICCB seeing anything until we hit submit to them. A platform that does all of those things probably would make my life easier. I'm not so sure about my faculty, but it definitely would make it easier to compile the report for the college.
Absolutely. I think always on the horizon is how we can better use technology to meet our needs. And I think that that's something I'm sure is on ICCB's mind now, how they might do it. Might need a little bit more assistance, but absolutely.
And I would echo what Sherry is saying. Program review is really a beneficial process, and I think it's beneficial for the faculty. And I think as they get more engaged and more involved, I think they see the benefits of it, and hopefully it results in improved student learning, as well as overall quality of their program. And it's an opportunity, I think, for the reflection and capturing the assessment that they've done. It really does impact how they become better teachers. So I think in that regard, we'll see more of it. I do appreciate the templates with the specific questions. But I would like to see probably just a little bit more flexibility. I think, and I think Sherry addressed it a little bit. The word format is difficult for many schools, especially if you haven't wrapped your head around a solution, whether that's locking down the template or using third-party software, which enables you to get more engagement and kind of standardizes and lets more than one person actually fill that template at the time and capture all that feedback. So I do see more schools going to a template and a third-party vendor or some other digital platform that would number one, manage the workflow, and number two, really standardize those templates.
What else? Any of the other panelists? Anything else you see or like to see in the future regarding program review? Thank you all for joining into the chat and letting us hear what's been helpful to you. We spent a couple of sessions trying to plan this to make sure it's beneficial and that you don't find it a waste of your time. So it's helpful to hear the things that our panelists have really thought about in advance of what they might share with you all has been helpful. If you have other questions that haven't been answered, I invite you to throw in the chat now while we still have panelists here and maybe could answer. I hope that you've gotten a lot of your questions answered, whether it's more philosophical or practical. I think that the people that we have helping us today have been amazing. I also hope that you all understand, again, there's no one right way to do this. And that the way that you're doing it at your institution probably works. And you just have to continue down that path. There are tips and tricks that I'm sure everyone on this call could share about what works for their institution. And there's things that each of us could then take, right, and use with the people that we're working with to enhance our own process. So I want everyone on this call to understand, keep doing the work. You're doing the work. And I promise you, by following through the process, You will continue to build out a stronger process, right? You'll continue to find tips and tricks that attempt to solve one of the challenges that you might have. And then you'll find another one, you'll find another challenge, and then you'll think about that. And hopefully you'll have a group of people that will work with you to do this. And it becomes less of compliance, more of a commitment. A couple of things that we do have coming up. I acknowledged earlier that there's another session, June 24th from 9 to 10. Some of you, I'm sure, are registered. But the last one in the series is around career and tech ed and the assessment of student learning. We'll send out a survey to ask maybe some of the questions that you might have. If there's something that you really want us to answer specific to CTE and assessment, I'd ask that you share that in the chat now so that we can have these questions ahead of time and address them hopefully during the webinar. But I'm hoping that, today's session has helped you just think through not just the general program review process, but you've had a chance to look at academic disciplines and talk through some of that, as well as cross-disciplinary instruction and student and academic support services where people said they needed more information and support. So in the chat, any last questions? Any questions that you want us to answer at the next webinar on CTE assessment of learning? Put in there. And then lastly, one thing that we asked the group before when we were trying to plan this, is there one resource that that you think everyone should either know about or read in regards to program review? Is there one thing? What is it that when people at your institution ask about program review, what is it that you share? And they want to know more.
The one thing I would share is don't reinvent the wheel. I mean, many programs have accrediting reports, your HLC report. You have a lot of the program review process already completed and done that you may not realize. Utilize those resources that you have. Don't feel like you have to reinvent it. Our health programs who are doing annual updates to their accrediting agencies, those are perfect documents to share with and use in your program review process. CTE programs that have programs of study, they use many of those 9 qualities that they use in developing that program of study to get ICCB approval are really coming directly from program review. So, this doesn't have to be all new. Use what you have, share what you have, and teamwork it makes the job easier. So this should never be on one person's shoulders. This is a collaborative activity, and that would be the tip that I have.
Who knows?
It shouldn't be on one person's shoulder is a great tip. Build a team, somebody that either is reviewing program review and providing the feedback with you, or those who have to support the work. So our team is our person over curriculum, myself, assessment, and research. We can, if they don't have the answer, they'll say, oh, no, that's this person. They'll send them to me. But for assessment, we get a lot of questions. And our faculty, we now have a faculty director of assessment. So he's a full-time faculty member who has a part of his portion of his work. His load is to do assessment. And he's working directly with faculty on those questions. So they're familiar enough with the entire template to be able to support. It's not just me. It's a team. So I would say if you have those individuals you already work with, try to collaborate a bit more in how they can support you and the faculty and the staff in doing the work.
Lynn or Hillary, any last comments before we end our time today?
I think it's just important to make anything we're doing meaningful, and so connecting it to what people care about and what they value. If it's not compliance, fine, but figuring out what's motivating them and what will help incentivize them in terms of, even if it's as explicit as, hey, this is a good way to get resources you're requesting. So figuring out how to tell that story and connect it to, so it doesn't feel like a burden or like just paperwork or checking off a box. I think that's critical, because then you've got the motivation and there's a desire to do a thorough job.
Lynn, any last parting words?
I don't have anything to add. I think everybody's pretty much covered it. We do have we do put everything in one shared drive so that everybody can access it at any time and promote that. So all the resources we have available for program review processes are out there. But other than that, I think everybody else has kind of covered. So have provided really great ideas and
We've exhausted all the tips and tricks of our panelists. Thank you all for joining us today on April 1st, right? I hope that your program reviews, if they're not already foolproof, are on their way to becoming that. And we'll send out a survey just to get some additional information from you. But we thank you for your time and hope that you found it useful, meaningful, valuable. Thank you all.